Well, women in Kenya continue celebrating a major step towards cracking the glass ceiling in the country's elective politics after the nomination of Karua as a major party's running mate. Now, Karua's rise to the top is the icing on the cake for the country's women rights movement that continues to push for more women in decision-making positions. Brenda Wanga now reports on women's journey to the near top.
The celebrations that greet the historic presidential ticket that places a woman at a breath's length of the presidency, Karua's ascendancy to a possible executive, the hallmark of close to 40 years of the push to have women in high places in leadership. The women liberation and equality movement's journey has been slow. From independence, women's representation was placed on the back burner, with none to negligible women getting a seat at the high table. But now, the tide seems to be changing in favor of women.
Generations of women have fought for space in the decision-making table. From the biblical Esther, to Field Marshal Muthoni wa Kirima, to Mekatilili Wamenza, Morangiti, Priscilla Abwao, Grace Onyango, Chelagat Mutai, and our very Nobel laureate Professor Wangari Maathai, to mention but a few.
Indeed, it has been a long, tedious journey for women to get to this point. From one woman in parliament in 1969 and the person of Grace Onyango to 22 elected women currently in parliament, women have been battling the political waves to make a mark in the country's political landscape. The definitive push started in the 1980s when Nairobi played host to the Third Women's International Conference in 1985, 6 years after the 1979 passage of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. At that time, Kenya did not have a single cabinet minister of the female gender, and out of the over 200 members of parliament, there were only 2 women elected. Fast forward to 1995 and the world gathered in Beijing for the World Conference on Women. Kenya, now pushing hard for the rights of women, sent a 450-strong delegation to that meeting, led by the country's first female cabinet minister, Mwilu. A year later, and riding on that Beijing wave, Charity Ngilu unsuccessfully introduced a motion on the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action. In 1997, Phoebe Asio tabled the first affirmative action bill. It did not sail through, just like many other attempts at mainstreaming affirmative action in political representation.
Phoebe Awino.
Karua's attempt in 2007 to have 50 seats set aside for women was also shot down in Parliament, although outside of Parliament, it was a popular one.
We have fought for everything that women now enjoy. It has been a fight. And in 1985, nobody would have imagined that this moment would come.
The promulgation of the 2010 Constitution was a real game changer for women representation. Now, Kenya is legally required to ensure that there are 2/3 gender representation across all sectors of government. While the full realization of this remains an uphill task, it has served to put more women in positions of leadership, both in and out of the legislature. Currently, women hold 22% of the seats in the current Kenyan parliament, with women holding 172 of the 1,883 elected seats overall in Kenya, up from 145 after the 2013 elections. The Kenyan cabinet is also catching up with women representation, making for 29% of the cabinet appointments.
Last year today.
This gender mainstreaming has also permeated the higher echelons of the judiciary, with 3 women sitting at the top of the judiciary's leadership in the form of the Chief Justice, her deputy, and the registrar as well. Kenya now has more women in leadership in parastatals and government institutions than ever before in the country's history.
The women of Kenya have continued to knock doors, to be on the decision-making tables. We have continued to indeed break the glass ceiling. Today, we have broken another corner of the break ceiling.
Martha's entry onto the Azimio presidential ticket is an impetus that Azimio supporters and women leaders are hoping will propel their agenda even further should Azimio's presidential run prove to be successful.
So and what has been lacking has been the political goodwill to get the framework, the legal framework for the realization of the principle. So if they get into government, and Martha has been given that docket in addition to being the deputy president, I think we shall generate the necessary goodwill.
Martha Karua is the first woman to be named as a major party running mate, giving her a realistic chance of writing history for the women. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV, Nairobi.